Welcome to the Travel Agent Podcast. I'm your host, Aylin Blanco. I interview successful industry professionals and share my personal journey to becoming a travel agent. The show is for aspiring travel agents and travel professionals at every level. My mission is to uncover the universal keys to thrive in this business. Join me as I take a closer look into the life of a travel agent. Hello, and welcome to another wonderful episode of the Travel Agent Podcast. And today we have another fabulous guest, and she's going to introduce herself.
Hello, my name is Amanda Hand, and I am a content manager, writer, and editor in the travel insurance industry. I currently am working for and affiliated with Go1 Global, so G1D Travel Insurance, and Waypoint Travel Insurance. I'm really excited to be here, answer some cool questions about travel insurance, and also kind of just talk about my own love for travel. So thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. I've been very excited to have you on the show ever since I met you on Clubhouse. And if you're not on Clubhouse, you need to get on there because there are some of the coolest people I've met this year on there. So I always get started by asking, how did you get into the industry? And I am very intrigued on how you got into travel insurance, because that seems like a very specific thing to kind of be your niche and your thing that you do in life. So I am so interested in that story.
Yeah. So I have this running joke with my family. When I was in my 20s, my mom was just kind of like, okay, you can't just try to travel. You have to try and do something, with, a career. You have to try to kind of get something developed. And I was in my head and I was kind of like, okay, so my joke is, my mom told me to get a real job, so I got a job and travel. So
hey, that's not a bad thing to do.
That's the running joke, but it was a little bit different than that. I was kind of really trying to get into marketing and wasn't really having any success getting into an industry where I could get something that wasn't really, low level and not great pay. And, I have a child to support at the time. And I was kind of like, okay, I'm going to really have to start putting my nose to the ground and getting work. And I ended up working in whole life insurance for about a year and a half, almost 2 years. Was not a fan of selling whole life insurance at all. And an opportunity came up in my local area where a travel insurance company needed to hire some help they need some help with their marketing. So I jumped on the opportunity and I ended up getting the job and working with this company for over 5.5 years before leaving and kind of going out on my own. And I loved every second of it. I worked with Travel Safe Insurance, which a lot of travel agents, they know who Travel Safe is. And I don't know, it was a family owned and operated company. It was a great place. It was a great place to work. They're still out there, offering products, but I moved on and kind of went out on my own for a little bit, finishing a degree, and trying to kind of figure out what the next chapter in my life was. And then I started working with Go1 Global, and it just gets better from there. I'm loving every minute of it.
That's awesome. So can you give us an insider breakdown of travel insurance and how we're just gonna jump into it. We're just gonna jump into it.
How it works during a pandemic.
Right.
Yeah. That's what everybody wants to know. You brought up Clubhouse and oh my gosh, that's where I get pinged. I get pinged into these Clubhouse rooms to answer questions about travel insurance and the pandemic. So it's definitely what everybody's kind of wondering. And now that I'm a free agent, technically I can answer these questions without lawyers and underwriters coming after me. So I can totally give you the info.
Please do, because I'm telling you, lady, like I normally like ease people into it, but like
Mhm.
no, we just want to know, and you have the answers.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, my first tip then is that yeah, don't assume that you can cancel your trip with travel insurance and get your money back. So a lot of travel agents know this. I don't have to tell them that that fear of getting sick is not a covered reason for trip cancellation. So, you know, we saw this with the Zika virus when the Zika virus was running rampant in the industry. There were a lot of cancellations, a lot of baby boomers who were going out on holiday were obviously afraid to travel to a country where Zika virus was a possibility. So they were canceling a lot of their trips to Mexico, Brazil, and other places that had this like baby moon tropical vibe to it. And they were canceling, thinking that their trip cancellation policy would cover because of the outbreaks. And unfortunately, it didn't. Had anyone gotten Zika virus before their trip and they were unable to travel, on doctor's orders, then yes, they would have been covered. But fear of getting Zika virus was not covered. And we're seeing the same thing with the pandemic or this current pandemic. We're seeing that people were noticing, oh no, there's like an outbreak and, I'm afraid to travel. Well, unfortunately, unless you have the magical cancel for any reason benefit, TripCan does not cover that fear of getting sick. So my biggest tip is to offer your clients cancel for any reason. I know that it's expensive, but I have a feeling that people are going to be far more privy to it now than they were prior to 2020. So that's the big insider tip, but I've got plenty more if we want them.
Well, and that's one of the things that I feel like is has always been a hard conversation. It's not really hard anymore, just because of everything that's gone on. I almost I don't want to say that I refuse, but I almost don't want to book something if someone's not going to take the insurance because there's so many things that can come up right now that I would hate for someone to lose all of that money for fear.
And it's also a little bit of a question of ethics and like that might, to somebody who, like, I'm in the industry, so it might be very biased for me to say that it's a question of ethics, but at my core, I actually do believe that, because if somebody is traveling and they don't have insurance, they don't have health insurance, they don't have evacuation insurance, they don't have quarantine coverage or trip interruption coverage, who does the onus fall on then when that person is in an emergency and a tour operator is responsible for them? Now, I know that you have your cruise lines and you have your major tour operators who are well connected and they have the financial resources. But what about those boots on the ground tour operators where like this is their livelihood, right? So you're thinking about, any sort of country in Central or South America, you're thinking about, countries in Asia, Europe, Africa, you're thinking about the people who they own these small tour operating companies and they're out there providing these services. And if something happens and your traveler doesn't have coverage, what stress is that going to then put onto that community that you're kind of, involving yourself with? So when it comes to it, I also consider it a question of ethics, because if I need if I need an emergency evacuation out in the Maldives, right? They're going to give it to me. They're not going to let me, die out on an island. But, who's going to then assume those costs if I don't have coverage? And it's definitely a situation where, sure, maybe they won't let you leave the country until you have a way to pay or an agreement to pay. You can do some crowdfunding, and we all know that GoFundMe is a big popular thing right now. But a travel insurance policy is so nominal compared, so minimal in cost compared to a catastrophic event like that. So I do kind of think your travelers also have to ask themselves, like, well, what is my responsibility in all of this as well?
I agree wholeheartedly. And story time. I had like a real bad toothache and I was in the Philippines and I made sure that we had, travel insurance. And had I not had that that insurance, I would have had to pay that bill like 100% before we left. And I
Mhm.
mean, that's super minor, but like if you think, I've had friends whose, parents who had heart attacks on islands and they had to be, and a lot of people think just in general that insurance isn't necessary. They have this bad or connotation towards insurance, but like trip insurance should be mandatory in my eyes, especially now.
Yeah, and it's becoming that way. So, you get it, and which again, travel agents, I'm not telling you anything y'all don't know. Like Costa Rica is demanding it now. You have, I believe it was in 2018, Kuwait demanded it. You have, for a Schengen visa, you have to have it. But we're starting to see a lot of really, really unique requirements coming up. For example, Costa Rica. Not only do you have to have at least $50,000 in, I believe it's 50,000, maybe even 55,000. Don't quote me on maybe fact check me. But I believe it's $50,000 in emergency medical costs. Emergency medical evacuation coverage is required. And on top of it, you have to have $2,000 in quarantine coverage. So for a travel agent, that's actually most likely trip interruption is the benefit where that coverage is going to be utilized. But what that means is if you are in Costa Rica and you get sick with COVID-19, or you're showing symptoms and maybe you were exposed to someone who had COVID-19, you're awaiting your test results, they're going to put you in quarantine. Well, if your quarantine extends the date of your scheduled trip departure, so when you were supposed to come home, you're going to have to pay that additional lodging. And Costa Rica wants to make sure that you do, in fact, have that money. So, they don't, of course, want their citizens having to host someone in an Airbnb for 2 additional weeks, unpaid. They can't manage that. That's unfair, right? So it goes back to that question of ethics again. So the requirement is there. And, travel insurance companies that do have your involuntary quarantine listed as a covered reason will cover for that trip interruption, so that quarantine stay. Will it be will it be the full amount? That's going to depend on what the traveler chooses to cover. So there is a little bit of like a mathematical equation, as we know. If the traveler only covers $1,000 of their trip, well, they don't have $2,000 in quarantine coverage. Then they have to cover $2,000 in trip costs. So yeah, I mean, it is becoming a requirement. And I think as the pandemic continues, we will see a lot of that.
I'm looking forward to seeing like and being a part of what the future of travel looks like. So I have a random question about annual travel insurance for travel agents. Is that something that you have dealt with at all?
I have. So actually, the company that I previously worked for, Travel Safe Insurance, they have a custom annual plan. Um, I mean, they're great in a lot of ways. I really do. I do think that they're great because it's, travel agents don't have time. Like everyone, a travel agent they're busy, right? Like you are white glove servicing so many different people, you're managing trips. I mean, there's a lot on your hands. So these annual plans are great because you can buy a plan at the beginning of the year and you can just continue to fall back on that plan. And it's it's great because if you're not using it, then great. You're not using it, right? If you use it the first trip that you take at the beginning of the year, well, thank goodness you had it. But as the year goes on, you'd have to probably then supplement it with another plan. But for most people, one annual plan is a great resource. I do have to be honest, I am a little bit rusty on the coverage, but from what I remember, trip cancellation coverage is not a thing, because a lot of your fam trips are, you're free anyway. And but I do believe there is trip interruption coverage. I just don't know the extent of it. But Travel Safe, I do know, has their annual plan up and running. So be sure to check it out. The medical limits are great. The emergency evacuation limits are there. And really, those are what, on top of needing that trip interruption for quarantine coverage, you really need that. What you need is that medical coverage and that evacuation coverage. So it's an affordable way to get yourself covered. And then, you use it, once you use it, you're like, okay, now I have to look at covering each trip individually or buying another annual plan. But for the most part, they're good news and convenient.
That's good to know. And I that was one of the questions I was really wanting to ask because I had one and I didn't need to use it, but I just felt good knowing that I had
Hmm.
it when I forgot about because you're right, we're busy. Um
And that's the big thing. And you can you'll remember to offer insurance to all of your clients, but then, you book that real last minute quick fam trip and you're like, oh crap, now I'm in Mexico and I don't have any coverage. It's like,
exactly.
yeah, yeah, I hear it. We've heard it.
So I do want to kind of dive in, pun intended, into a little bit of your love of travel and like what you like to do and experience on your trips.
Absolutely. So really, I don't have as much experience in traveling as I would like to, but I do have some really amazing experiences that I wouldn't trade in for the world. The pandemic kind of put a little bit of a kink in my plan, um, but I do plan on, you know, traveling once I'm fully vaccinated and my daughter is fully vaccinated, probably going to pull her out of school and do a little bit of travel, let her do some homeschooling, and kind of gain some experience through adventure. Um, First destination we're kind of checking out is Nicaragua. Um, but I absolutely love Central and South America, the Caribbean, everything I've experienced there. I think that the cultures, multiple, are incredibly rich, and the food is wonderful. And I just have so much appreciation for all of it. My most recent trip was Cuba, and I cannot express what an amazing experience that was. Everywhere from being in Havana to being out in Viñales in the jungle and just kind of experiencing all of the beauty that the mountains have to offer. And then going in and, taking a 1.5 hour bus ride to a beach and free diving for the day. I just had so many incredible experiences when I was in Cuba, but I feel that way about Belize and Guatemala and Mexico too. So it's really hard for me to, everything is magical to me. I think that that's the case. When you love travel, you see magic everywhere. And that's definitely my experience is that everywhere I go, just you have a visitor's lens. You're looking through, you're not in your day to day monotonous life anymore. So you're just kind of you're wearing rose colored glasses a little bit and it's just beautiful. Um, but the thing that I look forward to the most when I'm traveling is free diving. It's it for anyone who doesn't know, it's like scuba diving, except you're holding your breath. So it's a little bit different. For me, the name is really well suited, free diving. I think there's a lot of freedom with it. I don't have a lot of bubbles floating around. So oftentimes I blend in with marine life a little bit easier. So I've gotten to see some really great creatures. I've gotten to kind of interact with a really big grouper that actually kind of really scared me. Was being a little territorial. I learned quickly to back off. But I've gotten to dive the cenotes in Mexico, and I had an incredible experience doing that. I was actually just telling that story on Clubhouse. There's layers in the cenotes, mineral layers, and once you break a specific depth, the water becomes like clear and you can see these minerals just shining off of the wall. So it's like you're diving into this cave and all of a sudden the cave's sparkling once you hit like this certain depth. And I remember, just trying. You can't smile when you have these masks on because once you, especially with cheeks like mine, once you smile, you break the seal in the mask and your mask floods. So I remember being like, don't smile, don't smile. But by the time I turned around to come back up, I had flooded my mask a little bit because I couldn't help it. It was just so beautiful. And it was an incredible sight. And then on my way up, I actually saw my first tarantula. So there was also that. But it was just, that was one of my most magical freediving experiences. And but they've just been incredible. And the sport is just one way to see the world that, I don't know, it makes me see the ocean a little bit differently, because in those moments you kind of feel a part of it. So it's one of the reasons why I travel.
I love that story.
Oh, thank you. I love that story too. It's in my travel heart, my
Right.
journal. Yeah.
We all have that one story that, like, even just listening to it because you're reliving it over and over, it's
Mm-hmm.
magical every time you get to hear it.
Yeah.
Which is why I love hearing the stories. But lastly, I kind of wanted to talk. We kind of touched on it in the beginning. Your affiliation with Waypoint. Can you tell us a little bit about that particular partnership or affiliation?
Yeah, absolutely. So Waypoint is a part of G1G, so Go One Global. And they have, first of all, an incredible story. Um, so I was really excited when they hired me to do a couple of freelance pieces. I was really excited to work with them because I just felt like their values, where they stand in today's world, is just, they're exactly the type of people I want to work for and work with. And I don't know, it's just been great ever since. But what's been interesting about Waypoint is it's an excellent tool for travel agents. It is basically, it is an insurance aggregator. So it's a solution for travel agents to offer multiple different products to their clients and earn a commission. So there's a widget in development right now that makes installing it on your website super easy. They have the option for affiliate links and landing pages. So the options are really endless, and they're really tailored to the travel agent's specific needs and what it is that they're looking for. But what's really cool about what they're doing is they're building an AI bot named Itira. So it's an acronym. It's really cool. It's intuitive travel risk assessment. Um, Intuitive travel insurance risk assessment, sorry. And the idea behind it is that they take traveler details. So they ask a little bit more um, from the person up front in regards to information than a typical travel insurance company would. But then they run it through this algorithm, and they begin to match them with travel insurance plans that are most suited for their travel style, their destination, their trip. And it's just such a cool product. I was so excited to be a part of it. And I think that it's going to solve a lot of problems for the travel agent, because with it also comes free claims advocacy with every plan. So that's not at a cost to the travel agent. That doesn't cost anything for the traveler themselves. But if the traveler has to file a claim, and maybe they're unsure of what paperwork they need, or maybe they just feel overwhelmed by the whole process, they know that they have a claims advocate there to help them every step of the way. So honestly, it makes the travel agent's job a lot easier, because I've seen travel agents get involved in claims, and it can just be overwhelming. And of course the travel agent can still be involved at whatever level they want to be involved at, but it's a great solution to really seamlessly integrate into your business, so that you don't have to be the insurance expert. You can let Waypoint be the insurance expert, and let them do the work for you. But they're a really conscious group. They care deeply about the planet. They care deeply about sustainable travel. So they're kind of really building their business model to incorporate a lot of that. They're POC led, which is not common in the travel insurance industry, and their unique experience brings a lot to the table. Just a little bit about their company founder. He immigrated with his family to the United States from Pakistan as a traveling entrepreneur. His son had a rare genetic condition when he was born, and they thought that their health insurance that they had bought, would cover the cost of his medical care. So unfortunately, by the time that their son had died, they were over $200,000 in medical debt because the health insurance for the visiting family did not, in fact, cover that genetic condition. So he really, the owner, Zane Juwanji, just kind of went out on this mission to make travel insurance work. For the user, for the traveler, right? So he really believes in like educating the user versus like just getting that sale. So it's just been a great experience for me because I'm a consumer advocate. I really, really believe that the traveler should know what they're buying. And I think that that's why I've stayed in the insurance industry so long, is because I really do believe that it's possible for people to understand these products and to work with a company that, you know, has a great set of core values. And I don't know, it just seems like the stars are kind of aligning, and, you know, I'm watching Waypoint grow, and I'm watching them service their customers. And I just think that the work that they're doing is amazing. So if you're looking for a travel insurance provider that cares, you got one. So, and I don't get any commission for that. Just letting y'all know.
Well, thank you for that. And I think I think even like you're right. Like, you know, we wear so many hats and we have to be an expert in so many things. And so allowing actual experts in their particular field add value to our businesses um, is one of the reasons why I thought you would be an amazing guest to be able to help us kind of uh, walk through that little process. So, um, thank you so much for coming on the show. And if you want to know any more information, you can go to travelagentpodcast.com/blog, and all of her information will be there. Is there anything that's going on right now in your life, professionally or personally, that you are super excited about that I can ask you on our next episode when you come back to the Travel Agent Podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a few really cool projects going on right now. I'm um, doing some research to kind of understand travel insurance from an ethical standpoint. So I'm working with a couple people all over the world. So hopefully you'll see some stuff published in travel magazines or publications soon. It's my fingers crossed, pitching a few different places with some different ideas. But mostly, I think what I'm most excited about is the projects that I am doing with G1G. I've written a lot of content that should be publishing in the next couple of months that is really rooted in educating the consumer and anybody who uses travel insurance. So even from a business perspective, understanding the products. And I'm really excited to see how this process unfolds for the user, and to see how artificial intelligence is going to change travel insurance forever. So being involved in that project is just so incredibly exciting for me. So absolutely.
Well, I'm excited to have you back on the show and to discuss all the different publications that you find yourself in. So I can put that into
Thank
the
you.
universe for you. But again, thank you so much for coming to the show, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining the Travel Agent Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Visit the travelagentpodcast.com for more information about today's episode and other travel agent resources. Be sure to tune in every Thursday for new episodes. Until next time, continue to build a travel business you love.